happy to see that Europe is making a lot of progress, and they have done for decades, made a lot of progress in data privacy. I think I was surprised to see places like China, pass data privacy, comprehensive data privacy consumer law pretty fast. And I've been disappointed that in the US, even though we've had a lot of movement happening on the state level, it hasn't been a lot of movement on the federal level. So for me, it's exciting because I think, I've always been someone who's been very interested in privacy. And so now it's interesting that other people are interested in it too. So it's fun for me. So there's a lot of new regulations coming into play in the Middle East. I think the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, have recently passed data protection laws. As I said, China, Australia's had strong laws for a long time. They're just adding on there. I'm very interested to see, hoping that the data protection bill in India gets passed this year. I know it was introduced in 2019. I know it's gone under some changes, but I think people are really excited to see what happens in India. I tell people a lot that, India has more people than Europe and the US combined. So being kind of the largest democracy and having, seeing what's happening around the world. I mean, you guys have a front row seat in what's happening with data privacy, and then, having so much sort of tech investment come in as well. I think that influences as well. So I would love to see, movement on that front, especially, that could be, what happens in India probably could be an example for maybe what we do even in the US for privacy going forward. I think when people started talking about blockchain, they were talking about Bitcoin. So I think people are a little bit more mature, and they know when you talk about blockchain, you're not talking about Bitcoin, right? You're talking about sort of a method of being able to secure data or transactions. And so I'm very delighted to see, especially in the identity space, people come up with innovations around protecting people's identity. It's very too easy to steal someone's identity. So having something like blockchain as part of a process or a system to help protect someone's identity and be able to have them do transactions speedily, I think is really important. I think, very few people know much about the dark web. They hear about it a lot. We know that people's usernames and passwords are often stolen from organizations and they're sold on the dark web. So I think any tool that helps people, for example, like you may get a notification and say, well, your login or password was, we scanned the dark web, we found your login and password, and you need to change your password. I think those are all good things for people to know, because I think if you don't hear about it in the news, a lot of people don't think that it's real, that could actually happen to them. So any type of information that consumers can use to protect themselves is important. Well, the metaverse is huge. It's going to be huge. I think people get it confused when they think about the metaverse. They think about like an online virtual thing or wearing glasses. And that may be, there are some parts of the metaverse that will have that, right? But I think the thing I'm excited about the metaverse is kind of this device capability. So things with sensors where they're around you. So the metaverse, in my view, is, the internet around you, right? So it's not like you have to go to a computer or you have to go to a phone. It's like you'll be able to walk down the street and you'll have things interacting with you, and you'll be able to interact with it, without going to a computer. So that's, to me, what the metaverse will end up being. So to me, it's exciting, but then also scary because we're already seeing organizations or countries lag behind on protecting privacy of individuals of stuff that's already existing. So now we're talking about creating emerging things, emerging worlds, ways that we just weren't thinking about, protecting data in the past. So for giving an example, like in the past, like before the cloud, people thought, well, if I secure the perimeter of my building, the people who come in and out, the people who are in where the files are, I lock the doors, and then, I'm secure. But once you're in the cloud, you have to rethink that whole thing, because you're no longer in the building. Not everyone is in, you can't just, put something behind a door and lock the key. That's not sufficient. So I think the metaverse and the way that people will be connecting with devices and the data that they'll collect, we'll have to sort of rethink security and the way we handle it. So it's not just in a place, it's not in a bucket somewhere that you're trying to protect. It's data that you're creating as you go through life. It's your coffee pot, is your vacuum cleaner, your doorbell, camera. All those things will be collecting data, and you'll be interacting with them, and they'll talk to each other. So they're creating sort of cross information, cross-referencing information about individuals. So those are all things that concern me that I think we should need to be really thinking about. The top strategy for enterprises to deal with data is to not think in the same old ways. So, I think a fallacy that people have about the future is that they think like AI. So some AI thinks if I get enough data about the past, I can tell the future, but the future will not be like the past. So thinking in the ways that have, things that were okay in the past aren't going to be okay in the future. So the ways we protected data in the past are not going to be sufficient in the future. The way that we thought about privacy in the past isn't going to be sufficient in the future, because we're going to have a lot more data. And, we even see it with COVID. Think about when people used to ask you how you were doing, so how are you? They typically wouldn't tell you like their medical situation, right? Because they thought that was private. Now it's kind of out in the open, people's health information. So, we're changing, the world is changing, and we need to really think about, how we share information. And as long as we keep our eyes open and think about kind of the new threats, because people who want to do harm, that's all they do 24 hours a day is think about how can I take advantage of this new situation that people are in. Like, they're not really thinking about these new ways. So we have to be smarter than they are and try to be ahead of the curve. Optimizing your data and data strategies is kind of, for me, from a privacy perspective, I think the organizations need to realize that the data that they have, especially if it touches individuals or it's about individuals, that data doesn't belong to them. So that's kind of a very big mind shift for businesses to have. They thought, okay, if I possess the data, it's my data, but it really isn't. It's the data of the individuals, right? So you have to be a steward of their data and understand that because you're a steward of something that the data doesn't belong to you, that you have obligations, right? About to be transparent and to make sure that people understand what you're doing with their data so that they trust you. So if you're doing those things, you'll be able to fulfill the spirit of almost any data privacy regulation. So instead of being afraid of what this new regulation is going to make you do, think about the rights of individuals and how you protect them, and then what you would expect yourself. You want your privacy. You want, like, if you take your money to a bank, you would expect that they know where your money is and be able to tell you about it, right? But with data, we don't think that way. So I think we need to sort of start thinking in the same way about data, because data is valuable. It has value to the individual. So if you're holding data for someone else or you're using their data, you need to expect that they're going to want to know where their data is and what you're doing with it.